Why lift stones? Now, that's a question I've received many, many times. Look, there's multiple reasons, why I lift stones and why I incorporate them into my training. So, we'll just start with, some of the basics. So, why do I lift them? Because I enjoy it. It's a style of training that's very functional, very unique, and has a lot of, real world carryover because it's something that you often find yourself doing, especially if you're landscaping or doing things like that. Moving house, a lot of the objects that you pick up, they're going to be far lighter than a lot of the natural stones that you muck around and play around with. But it's that unique ability to pick something awkward off the ground, figure out how you're going to lift it, how you're going to sit it up onto your lap where you need to maneuver it, and have your core work in different ways. Now, one of the biggest differences with natural stone lifting and say a deadlift, obviously, the weight on the bar and everything else, it's centered. You can, pick it up, relatively easy. But when it comes to natural stone lifting, obviously, the center of gravity can shift. And what you're trying to pick up may not have the best handhold. So, you got to really work on your grip and your ability to hold, weight in unique ways that can be very taxing on, the forearms and biceps. Now, a lot of people think that, lifting natural stones is going to be, quite hard on the lower back. At a glance, it may look like that, but the reality is when you try and pick something up that's really heavy and awkward, it's going to be your forearms and biceps that limit what you can lift because, it's just so awkward. It's your smaller muscle groups that give out first. Once you're able to, pick something up and put it on your lap and then squat with it, the weight the vast majority of the time is then pulling you forward. Your center of gravity has shifted significantly, and when you stand up straight, you almost have to lean slightly backwards because if you did only stand up straight, you're going to get pulled forward by the weight. So in that regard, it's not like a deadlift where you can, keep the weight very close to you and, pull the bar up in a straight line, and really work your lower back thoroughly. Unless, you're picking up the stone in a really, horrific way. The natural stone lifting doesn't require your lower back to max out the same way that a deadlift would. Now, don't get me wrong, it can definitely hurt your lower back, picking up natural stones, picking up sandbags, things like that. But, as a training tool and learning how to move with the object, I find for me, it's my arms, heart, and lungs that give out, before my lower back. And then the next day, when I'm walking around, can definitely feel, biceps have been worked thoroughly. There's like a really deep DOMS in them. And the other place that I feel it, obviously if I'm squatting with a stone is my quads. It just hits them really hard just because of the angle. Most of the time, mid back, upper back, even lower back to an extent, they don't normally feel too bad. Like, obviously you can tell that they've been worked, but it's not anywhere near, as, painful, I'd say, as compared to doing a higher rep set of deadlifts where, your lower back really can cop, a significant beating. So yeah, look, and then another factor, when it comes to natural stones, there's so many different shapes. You can find ones that, work well for different goals. For me, I like, using this type of stone when I'm doing rows. It sits nicely in the hands and it's a good one to, pick up and carry versus, say, the bluestone block I find is a good one to squat with. It sits quite nicely and the weight is, relatively well distributed versus the big 150 kilo stone that I have. It's more like a boulder. It's quite challenging in terms of grip. When I finally get a good handhold on it, squatting with it isn't too much of a challenge, but it's more pulling the stone into me. And in that regard, obviously, that's where my mid and upper back really feel it. I'm trying to keep that stone close to the body. And, when you're doing that, you're limiting, how much breath you can get in, because your lungs can't really expand too well if you're trying to, crunch a huge stone into your stomach and chest. It's sort of counterproductive in terms of, breath work. So, different stones are going to accomplish, different things. The other reason I like natural stone lifting is, stones are so cheap. I get mine from a landscaping place. In a way, you can almost say it's like a quarry as well, but, they have, different piles of stones. Some are blue stone, some are sandstone, some are mud rock, some are granite. So yeah, you can really get your pick. For me, I prefer, mucking around with bluestone. It's a very, very dense stone, versus, granite is also really dense, but every time I've gone to get a piece of granite, it always seems to have ridiculously sharp edges, versus the bluestone, which I'm pretty sure is also known as basalt, is very different. So, generally it's not as jagged in terms of edges. A lot of the time it can still be really rough. So I'll take an angle grinder to it at times just to slightly soften the edge up so I don't lose too much skin, when training with it, because the goal is to be able to train. The goal is not to injure myself and tear my, hands and legs up. So, yeah, look, natural stones, they're really, really cheap, and you can get them at a landscaping place and a quarry. So it doesn't take too much, money in order to, get what you want. To give you an idea, the place that I was getting the bluestone from, a cubic meter was $120 Australian. Because I live in Australia, but for that $120, a cubic meter, that would be something close to 2.5 ton worth of stone. So yeah, look, every time I've gone there and just picked up what I need, I collect a few stones, they only charge me the minimum, which is like a quarter of a cubic meter. Price on that's a little more expensive. They just charge me $40, but same time I get to pick as many stones as I want, within reason, because have to get them home, and the car that I have that I'm putting them in isn't massive either. But yeah, look, you just muck around with what you want and what you enjoy. And enjoyment is obviously a big part of training. If you enjoy what you're doing, you're going to stick with it, and that's how you get strong long term. And the other reason I like natural stones is, in some ways it's similar to a deadlift. I'm picking something up off the ground and it just sends my deadlift north without having to put any real effort into it. So yeah, that's my take on natural stone lifting and, why. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. Otherwise, have a great day wherever you are.